Hello from Las Vegas and welcome to week 4 of Beat the Odds. You know, not since Jack convinced his wife to marry him have we seen a run like this for the Underdogs. The Dogs are crushing it right now. Question is, can they keep it up? Beat the Odds starts right now.
From our Las Vegas studios, this is Beat the Odds, sponsored by Superbook at the Westgate Las Vegas Resort and Casino, and powered by Sports Grid.
Was that too mean?
No, I think it was appropriate.
Okay, good. Hey, welcome inside our Las Vegas studio. I'm Dave Hall.
And I'm Mariah Janos. A quick look at the pro football standings, and we see surprises everywhere. Minnesota, Seattle, Pittsburgh, all undefeated, while Cincy and San Francisco are both sitting in last.
I know, and what a run for the Underdogs, not just covering spreads. A lot of them are straight up winning these games. So coming up on today's show, Teddy and Jack will break down this run for the Dogs, have our player prop showdown, and of course, their best bets of the week.
Plus, I'll be chatting with Brandon Marshall about the dreadful Vegas team in week 3, and our friends from Sports Grid are back.
Hey Vegas, we're excited to beat the odds with you guys once again. Coming up, Joe Lisi and I will look at a really underwhelming performance from Bijan Robinson and a breakout day for Derrick Henry in Dallas. And what does it mean moving forward? So sit tight. We'll join you in a bit. Back to the crew in Vegas.
All right, back with the boys, Teddy and the original Underdog, Jack.
Exactly. I was basically Carolina before the quarterback change. So, yeah, I mean, it was not pretty, but I kept convincing her it's going to get better, I promise. I've got the option somewhere up my sleeve.
Has it?
No, it hasn't. If you keep saying it long enough, they start believing you.
She's not a quitter.
And some of these underdog teams have been doing the same thing.
Exactly.
You just keep saying it long enough, they've been getting it done versus the number and straight up.
No doubt. Well, let's start there, Teddy. You got some numbers.
No doubt. How about this for the start of the season? Underdogs, shockers, of 5.5 points or higher, they're 14-3 against the spread so far this season. So that successful. You can say it's parity, you can say it's randomness, maybe it's a little bit of both. But the bottom line is the big favorites have been really bad for bettors' bankrolls so far this season. What did we see last week? The G-Men beat Cleveland, Denver beat Tampa, Carolina got the straight-up win here in Vegas. The LA beat San Francisco, and of course we saw Washington knock off Cincinnati on Monday night. All dogs of 5.5 or higher, and all dogs that won straight up, Jack.
Yeah, 10 straight wins. I mean, they're not just covering. It's been a lesson for the general public players that you can't look. We've talked about this on the show literally since the preseason. You can't look at favorites and overs and try to make money long term, and that's been what's played out early in the year to an extreme effect.
Sure. And then we got to talk about some of the tough beats. We'll call them stunners at the end of the last week's games. We'll start with Devin Singletary taking a knee at the 1-inch line. He broke free for the touchdown, and then outside of 2 minutes was smart enough to fall down at the 1. Over bettors not amused with the finish of that game, as after that the G-Men took 3 straight knees. Game stays under the total with Singletary down
I had
at the
the
1.
under. Thank you, Devin.
Never in doubt. Then we saw an Arizona pick 6 get waved off. It looked like he snapped it at 2:01, but the ref said it was 2-minute warning. Doesn't count. Arizona loses by 7. That pick 6 would have made a big difference for their backers. And of course, Atlanta. Say what you want about the non-pass interference calls on Monday night. They also decided not to kick field goals. And when you don't kick field goals, they ended up losing by 5. They kicked the first, they can kick the second. Good news for KC backers, not so much for those who backed Atlanta.
And the lesson here is good things are going to happen to, or bad things are going to happen to good people or good wagers. And so it's how you handle that. You're going to have a percentage of those games on Sunday that go against you. Some of them will go for you. Don't overreact either way. Marathon, not a sprint.
Yeah, that Devin Singletary kneel down. You got to wonder how many millions of dollars swung one way or the other on that.
And you'll forget about that the next time you have over and somebody does that at the 1. You'll be like, I always get these bad beats, but that's not the case. You're going to get on the right side of those sometimes.
And that's just a regular game. Think about something like that on a Monday night or a Sunday night game or a postseason game where the action is ridiculous. Yeah, a lot swung on that, but it's a fraction of what it could have been.
Sure. Well, you know what? Nobody loves the Underdogs more than Vegas sportsbooks. Mariah is at the Superbook Westgate, Las Vegas, with more on that.
Thanks, Dave. I'm here with EVP of Superbook Operations, Jay Cornegay. Jay, once again, the Underdogs are coming up big. They did that in week 3. How did you guys do overall?
Well, pro football remains our best friend. They're 3 for 3. The books have done very well. Looking at those results, you can understand why we're doing so well. You got teams like Cleveland, Tampa Bay, San Francisco, Las Vegas going down all in the same week. So the results have been very positive for the sports books.
And I know lines each week are based off of the power rankings. Is there any team that's kind of surprised you that's moving up those rankings as of late?
There's a couple teams out there that are notable as far as the power rankings are concerned. You look at Seattle. Seattle's been very consistent both at home and the road. They seem to be very well coached and very well balanced, and they're creeping up in their rankings. You look at Pittsburgh, they're creeping up in the rankings, but we are looking at maybe fool's gold there. They're not that great in our eyes. We probably have them around 10 or 11, but I've seen some rankings that have Pittsburgh all the way up to number 4.
And heading into the weekend, any early action that you're seeing?
A couple games come to mind. Kansas City at LA. Because of Herbert's health, you've seen that number go up from 7 to 8. And then you also got to look at Chicago. Chicago is very healthy, and they're catching LA, the other LA team, on the road right after a very emotional win against San Francisco. So that game has gone up from 2.5 to 3. So some sharp money on Chicago.
All right, Jay, thank you so much. Dave, we'll send it back to you in studio.
All right, thanks you two. Up next, we're already getting close to bye weeks, which actually is a good opportunity for you bettors. Teddy's going to show us why. And can a beat-up Bolts team possibly hang with KC? Jack has thoughts on that.
Before we take our first time out with 2 touchdowns in Week 3, New York receiver Malik Nabers became the youngest player in league history to record a multi-touchdown game at 21 years and 56 days. But what player previously held that record? The answer coming up next.
Beat the Odds is sponsored by Superbook Westgate Las Vegas and powered by Sports Grid.
Welcome back. Before the break, we asked you with 2 touchdowns in Week 3, New York receiver Malik Nabers became the youngest player in league history to record a multi-touchdown game at 21 years old and 56 days. But what player previously held that record? The answer, Mike Evans. He had 2 touchdowns against Cleveland his rookie year in 2014 at the ripe old age of 21 years and 73 days. All right, time to bring in our champ, Brandon Marshall. We're here in Las Vegas, so it just happens that the Vegas team was the embarrassment of Week 3, getting beat bad by Carolina, worst team in the league. After that loss, head coach Antonio Pierce basically made comments saying some players made business decisions, so the team is also going to make the same business decisions as well. Brandon, how do you interpret that comment?
Well, in the locker room, when we talk about making a business decision, typically it's like a turn down hit, or you run across the middle, you can catch the ball, but you alligator arm it. It's basically a lack of effort, right? A lack of full effort. And so he saw that clearly on Sunday against Carolina, that people wasn't giving it their all. They wasn't just laying everything out on the line to make a particular play. So that's what he meant when he said, people are making business decisions, and now we're going to make some business decisions.
Now, as a player, you go through the whole week of practices leading up to Sunday. Is there ever a time when you're entering Sunday's game, despite your opponent and where they fall in the league, where you just have a bad feeling that the game is not going to go well on your team's side of things?
I think it really, like you said, depends on practice, because how the team gels in practice, how hard we practice, how well are we practicing, kind of leading up into the game. Now, sometimes you might just get a bad feeling waking up on a Sunday morning, but against a team like Carolina, who is the worst team in the league, no matter how bad you practiced all week, it shouldn't have been that bad. Las Vegas blew out of that game. It was actually ridiculous. Andy Dalton had a career game, and so I don't know what happened that week. Maybe they took it easy because they beat Baltimore the week before, but you just don't know which Las Vegas team you're going to get.
It's just weird to have that contrast of Week 2 and Week 3. So with that being said, where does Vegas go from here? With all these internal struggles that we're clearly hearing in the media, is it a wash this season?
Well, first of all, I don't think anybody really thought Las Vegas were going to make a lot of noise this season anyway. But, Antonio Pierce coming out and saying that, because he almost pointed the blame at the players, right?
Yeah.
So that can kind of go either way, right? Now, Antonio Pierce is a well-respected and well-loved individual, but at the same time, maybe he's seeing something, right? Or maybe the players might look at it and say, okay, why are you calling us out? This is a team thing, right? So the Raiders are washed anyway. Las Vegas, I don't think they have anything, to really play for, but except pride and a paycheck.
That's definitely hurting right now. All right, Brandon, thank you so much. Two big themes we're seeing this season in the betting world, unders and underdogs. So here's Jack with more on that.
Love the spiciness going on in late September, right? When coaches coming out. There's also opportunities to make some money. We're looking at teams that right now are overachieving, or we think have been overachieving all year. So start the year, we've had these teams that have been big underdogs and been getting it done, not only against the number, but straight up. There are a couple more this week. Now, understand that going into the game, you're not going to love these spots, but this is what's been happening all year. So you look at Jim Harbaugh and the LA squad. They go and play Kansas City. Kansas City not running the ball very well right now. They've kind of become one-dimensional. And Jim Harbaugh, I think we're seeing what the culture of his team's going to be since week one. And it's actually similar to New England, which is my other one. They muddy up games. They ugly it down, keep the scoring down. Anytime you're looking at big underdogs to not only cover but possibly win, you can't have a bunch of scoring. So as long as Kansas City can't run the ball effectively, I think that plays into what Los Angeles is able to do. A little bit of value there, even with the quarterback situation being a little questionable. I like them. And then you look at New England, hard to look at San Francisco and say, boy, this team can stay within double digits. But again, New England muddying it up, winning time of possession, maybe they get a turnover or two. This is what's been happening in pro football this year. Those are a couple teams to keep your eye on. New England also 4-1 against the spread, their last 5 against San Francisco. So a couple to maybe not only cover, but might get it across the finish line.
Yeah, KC and even though they're 3-0, KC and San Francisco not playing at the level that most people are.
Yeah, and they have some limitations right now with what they're doing offensively for sure.
Sure, and of course, unders have been huge so far this year. Last week, 11-5 to the under. The week before, 10-5-1 to the under. So we've seen a lot of unders cash. But I want to talk about teams before the bye week. The first buys start next week, and it's time to start paying attention to this sort of stuff because we got some long-term numbers that show us very clearly before the bye, teams are bet on. They're not looking forward to their vacation. They want to zoom into it. So let's talk about it. Home favorites before the bye since 2016, 60% against the spread long term, 83-54. This week, Detroit in that role against Seattle. Home dogs before the bye since 2016, 30-19, 61%. LA, who you were just talking about, Jack, is in that role. Road favorites before the bye since 2016, 61% in that role. That's Philly and Tennessee this week. And let's not forget road dogs, who long-term aren't quite as good, 37-33, 53%. But last year, a big winning week for the road dogs. It was 500 prior to last year. So they had 4+ winners with road dogs before the bye. So all 4 roles profitable.
Yeah, just a piece of the pie. When you're trying to figure out who to put your money on, you've got to put all this information together. That's a piece that's important because we're seeing long-term being able to prognosticate how they're going to do heading into that bye, and it's a piece of the puzzle if you're trying to win money.
Prognosticate, big word, Jack.
I almost passed out too. I got lightheaded. What happened?
Hey, it's been a slow start for the season for some of the league's biggest stars, like a Tyreek Hill. Here's our guys with Sports Grid with more on that.
Kevin Walsh and Joe Lisi here, taking a look at some stars who left us wanting a lot more in Week 3 and what it means moving forward, beginning in South Beach. Miami superstar Tyreek Hill underwhelms going up against Seattle, but maybe it's not surprising with his quarterback Tua Tagovailoa out for the foreseeable future due to the concussion. Do you think that 3 grabs, 40 yards is going to become the norm for Tyreek moving forward?
It better not, Kev. Otherwise, Miami has no shot to make a playoff. Back-to-back games now, he's gotten 6 receptions, a total of 64 yards. They need a better effort and have to make Tyreek Hill the main component for that offense moving forward. They do have Tennessee, an 0-3 football team. It should start this coming weekend.
Now, going to the quarterback position, sophomore superstar C.J. Stroud throws multiple interceptions in Minnesota, and And while that defense looks dangerous, Stroud's ability to protect the football was one of his best traits in his rookie year. He only threw 5 interceptions over the course of that regular season. Is Stroud maybe due to turn it over a little more this season, or should he bounce back moving forward in that department?
I think he bounces back with a big effort, especially this coming weekend against a winless Jacksonville team. We saw Buffalo and Josh Allen slice and dice that secondary, 264 passing yards, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. C.J. Stroud breaks out in a big way this Sunday.
Now, of the trio we're focusing in on here, this last guy is the one who hurt me the most. Bijan in Atlanta, the superstar back in Robinson, had 16 attempts and could not cross 35 yards. I know there was some bad blocking. I know that Kansas City's defense occasionally can play with their hair on fire, but that was one of the worst games in his young pro career.
It was, and expect him to get more involved in regards to the passing attack with the divisional opponent this coming weekend in New Orleans. New Orleans coming off a loss. I expect Bijan to get around 25 to 30 touches this coming weekend.
You know, that is the type of workload that many will be looking for. I don't know if they'll overreact in Atlanta, but that 4th down, it was a blown block by backup Tyler Algier that sunk that play call. I wonder if that elevates even more touches for Bijan and could allow him then to thrive in a divisional matchup. Joe Lisi, Kevin Walsh will check back in on these stars throughout the season.
You're watching Beat the Odds, sponsored by Superbook at the Westgate Las Vegas Resort and Casino, and powered by Sports Grid.
All right, welcome back to the show as we fly over the Las Vegas Strip. Hey, scan that QR code on your screen there. It's our website, beattheoddstv.com. Now let's send it back to our guys over at Sports Grid.
Kevin Walsh and Joe Lisi here, taking a look at some of the top performers in week number 3 and trying to figure out if these will continue. And we got to start in Dallas, where on the other side of the field, Baltimore's back. Derrick Henry went off. His best game since joining Baltimore with 151 rushing yards and multiple rushing touchdowns. And, Joe, it's no surprise it came in his first win in a Baltimore uniform. I feel like this could be par for the course as long as Baltimore stays in the win column.
Absolutely. If Baltimore's going to win, they need Derrick Henry to pound the rock and also catch the football out of the backfield. You saw that this coming Sunday against Dallas, 23 yards in the receiving game. They have slowly acclimated Derrick Henry in terms of the offensive philosophy, and now with an undefeated opponent in Buffalo and Josh Allen, expect Derrick Henry to get the rock multiple times.
And projecting Derrick Henry to continue to perform is maybe not as tricky as figuring out what's going on in the San Francisco pass catching room. Injuries depleting this lineup, and it put Brandon Ayuk, many thought, in a situation to go off. 5 for 48 on 10 targets, not so good. Juwan Jennings, different story. 11 grabs, 175 yards, and 3 receiving touchdowns. Is Juwan Jennings going to become the key wideout as this team deals with all of these injuries?
He has a great quarterback to wide receiver relationship with Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy does go to Juwan Jennings in critical situations, and you look at Brandon Ayuk right now, 3 games, Kev, under 50 yards in each game. I expect Ayuk to rebound in a big way. And when you look at New England, they did get torched by Aaron Rodgers in New York. Expect Juwan Jennings to have a big factor in terms of this matchup.
I got to tell you, and look, you've been right countless times on Juwan Jennings. This cannot continue. 175 and 3. That should be his stat line over 8-9 weeks of football. And the fact it came in a loss, it's just one of the more surprising outcomes you will see. Speaking of surprising outcomes, okay, Carolina beating, Las Vegas, maybe so. Andy Dalton steps in for Bryce Young. 319 yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks. What a performance from Andy Dalton, who goes up against his former team in Cincinnati next week. Looking for a little revenge. You know, Joe Lisi and Kevin Walsh will have you covered.
Okay, so their idea of bicep curls involves flexing light beers, but whatever. It's Teddy against Jack in our player prop showdown. Today, the boys are debating Buffalo running back James Cook. Teddy.
Yeah, let's talk about James Cook. And real simple, all right, over under 53.5 yards. This week for rushing, Baltimore has the #1 rush defense in the league, allowing 2.8 yards per carry. And yes, I'm interested in yards per carry, not yards per game. Baltimore, number 1. So rushing yards not going to be easy to come by. Buffalo hasn't trailed since week 1. This is a game where, in theory, they might be trailing. So less opportunities for the running backs. And Cook's part of a committee right now. He only had 11 rushing attempts each of the last 2 weeks. I'm taking James Cook under 53.5.
Yeah, I mean, convenient not to take yards per game because Cook has about 62 yards per game, which is going to be over the total if he can get to his average. Also, he fumbled a bunch in the preseason, so he's been digging his way out of the doghouse since the preseason, getting more carries. AFC Player of the Week during week 2. I think they have to have him to stay in this game. You can't get one-dimensional, certainly at quarterback with Josh Allen. So I am actually going over the total this week, and I think that the number being lower is because of Baltimore's great run defense. I think they're going to keep banging their head in the wall.
Well, digging his way out of the doghouse is definitely something you know a lot about. Up next, it is the most scintillating 60 seconds in sports betting. Teddy and Jack have their best bets of the week. Did I oversell that?
No, we're going to be good this week.
Okay. All right, welcome back to Beat the Odds. It is time for the most scintillating 60 seconds in sports betting.
That word is way too big for Jack. He has proved he has a bit of a vocabulary, but it means exciting.
1-0 over the last 8 days, by the way. I mean, I want some credit.
Wow.
You guys beating me up a couple
here
weeks
we go.
ago.
We're just going to count each week where the best bets fall. All right, Teddy,
right.
let's start off with you.
Sure. I need a winner. So let's see if we can get one with a total this week. And let's look at Washington, Arizona, over 50/50.5, the current number as we speak. We have a pair of extend the play quarterbacks, guys who are really hard to bring down in Jaden Daniels and Kyler Murray. And a couple of potent offenses that go along with those quarterbacks who can scramble their way out of pressure. Look, I don't trust either one of these defenses. Washington's in particular on a short week. They're number 31 in yards per play. We've seen unders dominating in recent weeks. 21-10-1 to the under last 2 weeks. Not these two teams. These two teams both cashing over bets. I think we'll see another one on Sunday.
Both looking totals this week. I actually like a total as well. So we're going to
You
go.
always like totals.
I do. You know what? It's an addiction. I'm trying to get over it.
It's okay.
We're going to go. We're going to look under in teams that I think are inflated on their offensive numbers, and this one actually has a couple of them that match up well. Minnesota and Green Bay both. Offensive numbers have been inflated. Before the year, we didn't expect as much, especially with Jordan Love being injured. Whether he plays or not, he's not going to be 100%. Both teams really good in turnover margin at this point as well. I don't think that's going to continue. Look under the total in that one.
All right, good stuff, guys. You guys have fun watching football on Sunday. We'll see you next week.